I'm actually skipping the fashion and music corners this time. They're kind of a lot of work, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only one who enjoys them, so... Okay. Well, I've never been more wrong about anything in my life. Degrassi Fashion Corner, Season 4. A very special thanks to Broomheads, the Degrassi fashion blog, who has collected the looks of every character in every single episode of Degrassi up through somewhere in Season 5 of The Next Generation as of right now. I'm usually a few seasons ahead of my most recent script, so it's been a while since I last watched this season, so a refresher on the looks was invaluable to me. So one of the reasons I found this section so hard to write for the last video was because I found much less to say about the wardrobe here than in earlier seasons. Mainstream fashion in 2003 to 2004 was characterized by a lot of samey looks, what some today might call normcore. A lot of these looks were characterized by plain or basic patterned polos, graphic t-shirts, and jeans. More conspicuous clothing choices mostly fell into the realm of brands. I remember Louis Vuitton having a moment around this time, but Abercrombie and American Eagle were like more popular and affordable choices for teenagers. Of course, there were more dramatic looks in the alt scene, things that you can only get at Hot Topic, because remember, even though the internet was happening at the time, most teenagers were not buying their clothes on there, so they still had to get like what they could find at the mall. This is in contrast to the big bombastic clothes of the 80s and even somewhat of the 90s, which had a number of notable aesthetics. This flattening out of clothes into mostly basics and accessories means that we had a few casualties in the Degrassi wardrobe. Ashley Kerwin is one such victim of this mellowing out of fashion, as her more tamed down punk look of season 3 makes way for whatever is happening here. She slides from occasionally trying to look a little edgy to just wearing a basic hoodie and jeans. This is not an unrealistic fashion evolution. I know that my own Hot Topic fashion sensibilities mellowed out around this time as well, but it's a bummer to see her lose her sense of identity in the wardrobe as well as in the narrative. I guess it's kind of fitting, actually. Her clothes and her character both get more and more boring until they both disappear. Now, just because the early aughts didn't have a lot of distinct fashion aesthetics doesn't mean that they had none. For example, Ellie is one of the few characters that has a distinctive look this season, mostly for her ability to accessorize otherwise unremarkable outfits. She does wear a cute plaid skirt in the episode Back in Black, where it is utterly wasted on Sean Cameron's angst about his role in the shooting right before he decides to move back to Wasaga. Ellie definitely deserves someone who can appreciate her skirts. Alt fashion around this time was in what I'm going to call its early emo phase. Trip pants and all black wardrobes were falling out of style, and it wouldn't pick back up to become like more over the top again for a number of years. Unfortunately, by the time that happens, Ellie will have been watered down so much as a character that she doesn't look like someone who would even know what alt fashion is, let alone someone who wears it. So as much as I don't like it, it is a fair depiction of the fashion of the time. Like I said, individual looks have mostly been toned down. There's a real emphasis at this time on silhouette over the discreet aesthetics of nowadays, which are more about having things in your own wardrobe with a strong identity. Think like the hyper-recognizable core fashions, like Cottagecore or dark academia or clowncore. And even if you're not like low-key cosplaying as some sort of aesthetic ideal, a lot of people nowadays will gravitate to an aesthetic, like Y2K fashion, for example. The characters in Degrassi exemplify the fashion of the time by mostly sticking to similar silhouettes and colors rather than clothes that you could sort by personality. For example, Manny often wears halters, tube tops, and low-rise jeans with bright colors as her signature silhouette, while Emma relies on baby doll tees, tank tops, and capris. And I should also mention layers. Emma is almost always wearing like 2 tops or a cardigan on top of a t-shirt or something like that. Most of the personality from the wardrobe this season is brought in by accessories, like Manny's hats, for example. I must see her closet, as she appears to have a fedora in every color of the rainbow somehow, or Marco's in his everything. Seriously, if I was doing some kind of ranking here, Marco would probably be at the top for daring to do something interesting at the very least, even if I'm not 100% sure that it worked every time. He would also occasionally be at the bottom, though not as severely in, say, maybe a season 5 ranking. Okay, but that's spoilers. Of course, I can't talk about the fashion in this season without mentioning Spinner's hair. Time Stand Still is notable for a lot of reasons, many of which I mentioned in my last video, but I somehow missed one of the most important, which is that episode is when we get this. For the first part of season 4, Spinner has this long and surfery cut, but in Time Stands Still, he debuts his bad boy haircut. I'm not going to harp on it too much, mostly because I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said by Degrassi fans 100 times. He looks like if Miley Cyrus was a Canadian emo boy, like if Kid Rock and Justin Bieber raised an edgy lesbian love child, like, okay, I should stop. I said I wouldn't. Wait, one more. Like if Dartrix was the school bully instead of the school nerd. Okay, I'm done. Okay, no, seriously, I do feel kind of bad because Shane, Spinner's actor, has said before that he got a lot of grief for this haircut, both at the time and for a long time afterward. He might still, I don't know. In a 2006 interview with the Ins Degrassi podcast, he said that he would cringe whenever he had to sign a poster from that era, which did feature the haircut.
I get made fun of to this day about that haircut, and there was that big group cast photo that was used basically for everything for season 4 and season 5 with us all in the hallway.
Right, you're kneeling in the front there.
I just had to sign that poster over and over and over, and every time I kind of
You're looking slamming in that photo. You're crazy.
I get how people would look at it now. There's this Reddit post that refers to it as a Karen cut, which I don't think it technically is a Karen cut, but like I get what they're saying here. But honestly, this was definitely the shit back then. There weren't a lot of strong hairstyles for guys back then. I just don't think that white boys had discovered the wonders of like short on the sides, long on top yet. They definitely hadn't figured out how to use styling products yet. Like Shane's hair was naturally curly, as we can see in other seasons, and he says that they had to flat iron his hair every day on set, which is totally foreshadowing how emo hair would come to be. Anyway, I think the fact that Spinner's hair here is so different from everything else in the show is what makes it so divisive, even to this day. Speaking of Spinner, he also rocks a couple of very popular accessories for guys at the time, such as the ball chain necklace and this thing. I don't know what they were called, but they were these long cylindrical like bead necklaces. Sometimes they had these round beads like ball bearings in between the cylinders, and I remember one of the ones that I had would often shift a little and like grab on my skin or hair, which made it like painful to wear. A very hardcore choice for Spinner Mason. JT York also gets in on the accessories game with this puka shell necklace. And hey, can I just say, I actually don't think I'm qualified to make these videos anymore because before I started writing this script, I thought this was a puka shell necklace. And something in my head was like, wait, just make sure that this is a puka shell necklace. And I did, and I looked it up, and apparently this is a cowrie shell necklace, not a puka shell necklace. My life is a lie. I'm a sham. How am I supposed to talk about mid-2000s era anything if I don't even know the difference between a puka shell and a cowrie shell necklace? Ugh. Anyway, I don't think there's much to say about the girls' hair this season. It's long, it's straightened. Everyone was straightening their hair back then. It was just like a thing that people did. I'm glad that that is mostly out of style, I think. The other big like fashion accessory thing is, of course, the little jelly bands that I talked about in the previous video. I had a whole section on it. So if you haven't seen that video, definitely check it out because I did a lot of research on that. I do have a couple of honorable mentions that really can't go anywhere. Cowboy hats show up a couple of times in this season for no reason. Like, really, I don't remember cowboy hats being a thing. Maybe Paris Hilton wore one time, now that I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure. Paige wears this pink one in a couple of episodes, and Manny sports an orange one in Neutron Dance. Actually, there might be something to the idea that these two, who are played opposite each other all season, are wearing cowboy hats that don't complement each other, kind of like the black and white hats of the old school westerns. Like, the black hat was the bad guy, and the white hat was the good guy, and so like Manny and Paige are pink and orange, which is like, you know, like neither is kind of better than the other, but they're like definitely don't go together. Or I'm way overthinking it. It could be either. Manny, despite the brightly colored fedoras, is probably the fashion winner of this season. Her shoes in Bark at the Moon are probably my favorite thing that anyone wears. I really like how she feels like a kid trying to do something with her style, even if it might not be working out entirely. She is fashion oriented, and you can tell that by looking at her. Hazel wears a bedazzled shirt that is very nostalgic for me personally. You couldn't turn around in a mall without seeing one of these at the time. And of course, the old school goth vibe that Kevin Smith has Ellie wear in his movie. It's lampshaded in the episode as being old fashioned even for the time, but I've always really liked it. I mean, it's not like the best or anything, but again, I think I just enjoy it when a wardrobe has personality. So Music Corner is going to be a little shorter than usual, mostly because the majority of the music that shows up this season played a role in the story, and so I said what I needed to say about it in the video. But I have a few spare things to say. So Downtown Sasquatch doesn't really do much this season, musically speaking. They try to get a new song together for the recording time that they earned from season 3, but without Jimmy, it doesn't really work out, so they opt to record Everything's Dust instead. That gives us 2 additional versions of the song this season, accordion with Craig singing, and of course the iconic accordion without Craig singing.
I don't know if you'll forgive me for being so blind to how. Is that what I think it is?
They could honestly just keep recording Everything's Dust forever and in perpetuity, and I'd be okay with it. It should have been on Craig's infamous little album later in the show, which I will definitely talk about when the time comes. An interesting note, well, interesting to me anyway, in Neutron Dance, Marco mentions that Everything's Dust is a little pretty. It could be that he means that the version they've been playing with Ash is pretty. Adding a keyboard to the band, especially with how Ash plays, could make the music a little softer, I suppose, but I've always just assumed that he meant that the song was too pretty in the first place. That's a criticism that I really can't get behind. It's only as pretty as, like, say, Creep by Radiohead is, which is to say, like, it's not really very pretty at all. I mean, it is kind of soft, especially at the beginning. It's just kind of like Craig singing into the mic. He's kind of sad, but it definitely picks up musically as it goes on. And at the very least, I think the lyrics themselves could be read as kind of passive-aggressive or even toxic, which is one of the reasons I really like it. I think it works as a rock song written by a teenage boy. These sound like emotions a teenage boy would feel. These aren't critiques of the song. Like I said, I adore Everything's Dust. I just don't think that I would use the word pretty to describe it. Now, I might say that about their next song, which I'm gonna call Nothing at All.
There was nothing at all, no, nothing at all. There was only a dream of you, There was nothing.
Nothing at All is the song that Ash and Craig play at the school dance that gets their music in front of Kevin Smith. It impresses him enough that he commissions Craig to write a song for his movie, even after his music director turned the 2 of them down earlier in the episode. I didn't get a chance to talk about it last time, but I love that scene, by the way. He describes Ash as a whiny girl impersonating Kate Bush, and he calls Craig a Bon Jovi wannabe. These are both incredibly 80s reference points for a music director who is ostensibly making a movie set in the 2000s. I don't know if this is because of the writers and they didn't realize that these were kind of dated references, or if it was supposed to imply that maybe this guy isn't incredible at his job. Not that I think that a Kate Bush reference is ever bad. I am always happy to see Kate Bush brought up as criticisms. I love both of them. I think that only one of them is fair, but I'm gonna let y'all figure out which one. I do like the song Nothing at All. Like a lot, in fact. If I'm walking around singing a song from Degrassi and it's not Everybody Wants Something, there's like a 90% chance that it's this one. I don't know why. It might be because I watched season 4 a lot, but it's catchy. The distortion on Ash's voice sounds really nice. It just gets stuck in my head. I kind of wonder sometimes who did more of the writing on the song, like within the show, because it sounds much more like the music that Ash goes on to make than Craig, yet he's the one who ends up writing a song for Kevin's movie. I don't know. We never really get to hear that song, by the way, not that I remember. We see Craig struggling to write it in the boiler room, but I guess they just didn't think it was important enough to require hearing it. In the next season, in season 5, we get this episode where the film premieres in Toronto and all of our characters kind of get to like witness Kevin Smith's movie. And Manny references the fact that Craig's song played during the credits and like checks to make sure that everyone stayed for the credits, but we didn't get to see that. So unfortunately, that's just a mystery song that Craig wrote. And that's it. So y'all win. Because of the number of comments I got of people wishing that I'd kept this part of the intermission in, I had to make it up to y'all, especially after my very, very long hiatus this past year. In the future, depending on how long they are, these segments might end up going up on Patreon as bonus content instead of into the episode. But of course, I'll talk about outfits and songs that are important to the plot of the videos without them being behind a paywall or anything. I'm going to talk about this more in my next video, since Craig's music career features some in the next few seasons, but I find it interesting how being a professional musician starts to overtake actually writing music or like being in a teen garage band for the future of the show. We see so much less of the process, like writing, practicing, being in a band, etc. Then we do things like gigs, recording, record deals, like actually trying to become a musician. In the future, I think it's more about the power fantasy of being a teenager on the verge of being a famous musician. I think some of the writers were into this story. I mean, Instant Star was a thing that happened, and it was by a number of people behind Degrassi, so I think that there was an interest for the writers. But unfortunately, I think this is an overall loss for the show, though it will be a gain for Degrassi Music Corner, as we'll be getting a lot more songs to talk about. I might even start critiquing them a little bit more, rather than just saying like, oh, hey, I like this song. And so, yeah, that was it. I hope those of you who begged me to bring this back found something entertaining in this. Thank you all for being so patient. The next deep dive is coming. I am literally working on it in my spare time. It's just a matter of time. It's coming. It's going to be a long one because I'm trying to cover, we're in a slog. Just to peek behind the curtain a little bit, we are in seasons that I really don't like, and so it's kind of a slog. So I'm just going to try and like burst through a bunch of seasons that I don't like. So the next one might be a little bit longer and maybe a little more shallow than I usually do, but I don't know. I think it'll be worth it to get to the seasons that I actually care about. For those of you who have stuck around, thank you all for being so supportive while I took my break. There's been a number of you checking in on me, and I appreciate every single one of you. I'm so glad to be back. And so until next time, I hope you have a great day.